Oh my God, Constance is here. One of my favorite professors. Hi. Colin's here. Oh my gosh, we've got a lot of people. We got 50 people.
Wow, this is incredible.
Well, thank you everyone for showing
Have
up.
a maximum?
300.
Yeah, I don't think the maximum for
it might be 500. So.
Hi, Libo. Great to see you.
Oh my gosh, so many people.
I think Lucas needs the physical link.
Can I put it in the chat? Would that be okay? He needs the link.
Marshall, you got a compliment on your facial hair.
Oh, nice. Okay, hi everybody. How are we doing? Are we ready to get started, panelists?
Yeah. Yes.
David, Megan, Kio,
Yes.
Serene, ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everybody, my name is Marshall Sharpe and I'll be introducing all of our panelists tonight. I'm a Master's of Fine Arts student here at UC Santa Barbara. And we're so excited to have all of you here. It looks like people are still joining us. So we've got about 60 people on the call right now. Unfortunately, we can't hear you all speaking as attendees, but we can see your chat. So if you want to say something to us, please just open up your chat box in the bottom and then you can say hi to all of us. Today we are celebrating the opening to our Masters of Fine Art Thesis exhibition at the Art, Design, and Architecture Museum here on UC Santa Barbara's campus. And this is an online exhibition. Of course, we were hoping to have it in person, but due to COVID, it will be online instead. And we'll send you the link momentarily to the online exhibition where you can see all of the work. We're very proud of it and we're very thankful to the museum for giving us space on their webpage to showcase our work and to celebrate kind of the culmination of our program here at UC Santa Barbara. We also have an exciting announcement. When one of our faculty mentors, Shauna Moulton, found out that our thesis would have to be canceled due to COVID, she gave us a very generous offer, and she has an upcoming solo exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Santa Barbara, and she offered us 2 weeks from her solo exhibition for us to have our thesis show this fall. So we're very excited to have this venue this fall. It's a fabulous location right on State Street in downtown Santa Barbara. We're going to get a lot of foot traffic. We don't have a firm date yet, but we'll keep you posted and let you know when that date is scheduled, because we hope that you'll all come see our work in person. That's so important as artists to get to showcase our work in person and have you see it in person. But for now, online is the best that we can do. Today, we're very excited to be introducing you to ourselves and to our work. We have 6 artists who will be giving presentations today. Each one will be about 5 to 10 minutes long. And then after our presentations, we'll open up the floor to you all to hear any questions that you have for individual artists. So the way you'll ask questions is you'll just type something into the chat box, maybe let us know which artist your question is for, and then we will try to answer your questions as best we can. Today we'll be presenting in the following order. Thomas Stoeckinger will go first, followed by Serene Blumenthal, David Wesley-White, Megan Koth, myself, Marshall Sharpe, and last but not least, Kio Griffith. We also have a very special guest in the audience today. Her name is Alexandra Terry. She's the Associate Curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Santa Barbara. Alexandra, thank you so much for being with us today. If you can hear me, if you could say something in the chat, maybe that we could see that you're here, or say hello to you. Oh, okay, great. There she is. Hi, Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we have a few thank yous that we want to say. A big thank you to Colin Gardner, our graduate advisor this year, who's helped kind of guide us through this challenging time of COVID. And of course, a big thank you to Shauna Moulton, who's also on the graduate advising committee and has graciously given us 2 weeks of her solo show so that we can show our work this fall. Before we get started, I'm curious if there's any parents in the audience, if you all could go to the chat webinar and just write your name in, or write the artist whose parent you are. I think I saw Megan, that your parents are here. Do you want to say hello quickly, Megan?
Oh yeah, I already did, but yeah, hi,
Okay.
hi Mom and Dad, and my sister and my brother-in-law are also here.
Okay, great. David, I think some of your family is here as well. Do you want to say hello quickly?
Hi, fam. Yeah, I see them all.
Okay. Serene, do you want to say hello?
Yeah. Hi, Mom and Dad. Justin, thanks for coming. And to all my friends out there.
Thomas, would you like to say hello quickly?
Hello there. Thanks for coming.
And lastly, we have Kio Griffith. Kio, would you like to say hello? We can't hear you yet, Kio. Can you unmute yourself?
Unmute yourself, Kio.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here. I don't think my mom's here because 16-hour difference.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first artist to present will be Thomas Stoeckinger, so we'll give the floor to him. Let's give a big round of applause to Thomas.
Hi there. Thanks for joining our little artist talk this evening. The list of people I need to thank for this is too long to list here, but I do want to thank the AD&A Museum for this online show and the MCA for taking on our future in-person show. I was just taking out my customized 4D AC-powered representational vehicle out for a little spin here, but I'll circle back to this contraption. But first, let me talk about some of the other work I've made here while at UCSB. I'm going to share my screen and show you some images. So I want to start by talking about Grant Wood, who painted the virtual background I'm in right now. Wood is known for his paintings of rural America, while the satirical commentary of his images is often overlooked. Yet paintings such as Parson Weems' Fable, in which a miniature version of the physically mature George Washington is unable to lie about chopping down his father's cherry tree, more clearly illustrate an awareness of how truth and fiction evolve in intersecting directions to create popular fables, myths, legends, and cultural ideologies. I use Grant Wood as both a formal and conceptual reference to the process of re-articulating or reorienting inherited vocabularies, whether aesthetic or intellectual, within the context of contemporary realities and progressing social values. This image shows what can be considered either a sculpture or a painting that has started last summer when thinking about archetypes of the American pastoral fantasy and how even seemingly banal designs of decorative landscape paintings both reflect and affect cultural ideals, which got me thinking about how these landscapes provide fertile ground for cultivating ironic interventions. I want to stretch the horizon of tension between the reality of modern food production, the manicured beauty of a tamed yet natural land of plenty, traditional Americana, and popular fictions. Aspects such as a slight taper of the vertical and horizontal planes of the painting surface, three-dimensional figures in the foreground, and a mirrored chamber reflecting a hologram of a little cow introduce multiple approaches to illusion that either enhance or conflict with each other. I'm interested in how matrix of representational strategies inform abstract systems of creating and viewing representational imagery. While American pastoral pastimes focuses on agriculture as a central infrastructure of social survival and cultural identity, my sculpture Mailbox emphasizes the slippage between form and function, or utility and representation of utility, within the context of communication infrastructure. I tinker with both contemporary and traditional cultural iconography and fabrication processes in a way that might undermine the rigid authority of certain tropes, while retaining some of the affect of importance that objects like life-size figurative sculptures convey. For example, this sculpture includes an aluminum plaque of an altered US mail logo that I designed, 3D printed, and casted. My embrace of certain lowbrow aesthetics in the form of scatological references or the overt use of puns potentially operate on multiple levels. Viewers are free to read certain pieces as a visualization of a linguistic pun or a bathroom joke. On the other hand, puns exemplify the flexibility of words in their virtual relationship to external reality, or in the case of Mailbox, they may convey metaphors for stereotypes involving gender and communication. I think humor can facilitate profound approaches to undermining pretentiousness, while the irony of publicly expressing humility reflects a contradiction involving constant readjustments within changing circumstances. A lot of my recent work involves simple interactive engagements, such as sharpening a pencil intended to facilitate participation in the representational narrative. In the case of this project called The Jolly Green Giantess takes John Doe out on the deer on 2 horses. An electric motor brings to life a distorted American myth with postmodern morals and a redirection of the focus on corporate production and masculine strength. Before the Green Giant was jolly, he wore a bearskin in reference to various versions of European fairy tales in which a man makes a deal with the devil to become rich after 7 years. Some of America's most popular myths follow this path of origination, such as Paul Bunyan, whose myth was first translated from the oral histories of loggers to promote sales for the Red River Lumber Company. Similar to how the Green Giant brand appropriated folk stories to tell an artificially selected strain of peas to buyers skeptical of the variety's unusually large size, I gave the Green Giant's mascot a sex change and new context in order to contribute to the process of creating new American myths and maybe even value. You can say it's all part of the age-old process of trying to chip away at the peeling layers of corporate green and whitewash in its authoritative influence on American culture to reveal the colorful patina of evolving history. I wanted to play with the scale in this sculpture, and I wanted the facade of forward movement towards the carrot and the indifference of the Jolly Green Giantess to enhance the pathetic imitation of the little man on her lap. Speaking of pathetic imitations of men, this image is taken from a video that involves exploring the functionality of a series of flaccid baseball bats I made. I wanted to create an object that activated an illogical humor similar to the illogical passion that I experienced as a baseball fan or a fanatic who by definition is consumed by excessive and single-minded zeal. The title Juice Ball is shorthand for the debate around how variations in the manufacturing processes of baseballs affect the actions and results on the field. The title of this kinetic sculpture is Banging Scheme, which is also the name given to the cheating scandal in Major League Baseball, in which the Astros relate stolen pitching signs to the batter by hitting a trash can in the dugout. Like my flexible bats, the phrase banging scheme seems to have both literal and figurative connotations. On one hand, professional baseball epitomizes an emotional investment into rigid aspects of modern American society that I find most problematic, namely pastoral fantasies of the tame natural frontier, relentless competition, normative masculinity, the power of modern corporate elitism, and exclusionary American conservative culture. While on the other hand, I justify my fandom by pointing to baseball as a relatively banal outlet for personal and cultural inclinations to engage in competition and corporate spectacle as long as I keep things in perspective and don't take myself too seriously. Personal experiences such as working as a professional landscaper and being a baseball fan helped me see efforts to cultivate a pragmatic approach of balancing the utility and contradictions of garden variety vocabularies with the adaptive awareness to changing meaning. I'll finish with Foot Wash and Fool, in which I wait on my knees and wash the feet of anyone who wants to participate while singing them Elvis's Love Me. I was inspired by the performance of washing feet in the Catholic Church I was raised in, a gesture which holds significance in many other cultures and allowed me to humble myself while maintaining an awareness of the inherent irony of this action. Elvis Presley is an icon of confident masculine sexuality in America, yet the lyrics of many of his songs are declarations of his vulnerability, fragility, romanticism, and humbleness in the midst of the one he loves. I guess he didn't write many of his own lyrics. I think of my work as a playful yet rigorous exploration of serious topics, justified play, or maybe it is just play. The other person in this photo is Serene Blumenthal, an amazing artist who has been a huge inspiration and a great friend to me during my time here at UCSB. I'm happy to now hand it over to Serene so that she can talk a little bit about her work.
My work has been made, and Santa Barbara wants to collide history, mythology, and felt sensation in object or space, working with the found, the reformed, and the constructed. My work explores eroticism, mysticism, and new materialism, using history and theatrics as a point of contact into the unknown. We obsess over Sappho's poetry, hoping to counter the legacy of the epic with that of the fragment, the lost bits that will never be salvaged, a poetic dissolution of what order is what. Now I make the unsalvageable. Next I present to you David Wesley-White.
Thank you so much, Serene, for that inspiring presentation. So hello, everyone. My name is David Wesley-White. I'm excited to be sharing some of my recent projects with you. So I use a research-based practice to examine personal and American history through a queer lens. I often fixate on forgotten or devastating events until I find visual clues hidden deep within them that feel particularly surreal or prophetic. I then use this source material like language, finding ways to manipulate meanings through specific interventions and arrangements. In recent work, I have begun questioning the symbology of gay male culture, how it was born, and how it reproduces itself without the ability to biologically reproduce. These works that you are viewing appeared in my solo exhibition, The Anatomy of a Whole, at Glassbach's Gallery here at UCSB. Upon first glance, I hope the viewer will mistake these pieces for wrinkled sheets, an image all of us are familiar with after a night in bed. A closer look reveals that each fold is purposeful and sewn, and with a faraway view, one might begin to notice the human form appear. Each sheet is named after the model who helped me make it. This one is called Liam. Here is me sheeting another friend, Dallin. In tune with the work of Felix Gonzalez Torres, this work speaks to the ephemerality of gay intimacy. By capturing the hollow impression of queer bodies, I'm creating life-size documents of our existence. While they represent our human connection, they also serve as a physical divide. The participant is asked to stay still for approximately 2 hours while I pin the sheet. We must decide how to negotiate this appointment, which can be sensorially pleasing at first, but often becomes strenuous. The space usually gets filled with a conversation similar to first date banter or a phone call, because I can't see their face. For another piece in that show, I stole $10,000 from the Oval Office and presented it as an art object. A video piece titled Oval Office ASMR accompanied the stolen money, showing how I got it. The piece climaxes when I punch a hole through a cowboy painting on the wall and retrieve the money hidden behind. Finding and replicating significant scars and openings has been an ongoing practice for me, like in this piece titled, If the high impact, high velocity round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body, which is a quote from Beto O'Rourke directly before his more well-known quote, hell yes, we are going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. I first became interested in the specific shape of wounds when researching the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida, an event that I found incredibly disturbing, and that was the deadliest mass shooting in America at the time. I created this installation to memorialize the 5 life-saving blast holes that saved hostages being held in the club bathroom. The careful recreation of the 5 holes in a fence is meant to illustrate the widespread impact of domestic terrorism and homophobia, how the trauma was born out of and can reverberate back to domestic space. Taxidermy birds laid on wool pads through each hole in the fence. The back of the fence was painted in nightclub black, a color that is used in nightclubs across America. I found this blueprint to the original White House while researching the burning of Washington in 1812, when the British attacked the American colonies. This historical drawing by George Munger documents the aftermath of our first White House 14 years before photography was invented. My interest in political replicas has extended into other areas of inquiry, like these anti-New Deal propaganda coins from the 1930s. And these bills that mocked FDR. It reads, redeemable in broken promises, is that what we're headed for? And happy days are where again? And also 10 million out of work. For context, in our current situation, we currently have at least 35 million out of work in the United States. And Goldman Sachs warned Wednesday that the jobless rate will peak at 35%. The Great Depression peaked at 25%. In this work in progress, I've begun embroidering the imagery into bath towels. I have also begun working with another politically charged relic, the 1980s version of Gay Monopoly, made by Fire Island Games of West Hollywood. The hyper-masculine interpretation of gay culture is apparent through the sexualized, pinup-style Tom of Finland art and mapping of popular cruising locations on the game board. I was particularly intrigued by the game pieces that reduce gay male culture to shiny, easily consumable tokens. I have begun recreating these tokens at a larger scale out of Crayola model magic and oil painting them in silver. And I'm inventing my own tokens that I imagine to be in the game. And I'll hold up one here so you can get a context for scale. These are the handcuffs. Okay, so in the last work I will be sharing today, I created a cast of characters in the form of these costumes to inhabit an environment called Castle Garden. Now I will be sharing a sneak peek of this video. So as I just finished this piece, I don't quite have the language yet to theorize exactly what it means, besides that it is an amalgamation of all the ideas I discussed here today. So with that, I wanted to thank you all for watching and hearing a bit about my practice. Next, I am happy to introduce my talented colleague, Megan Koth. Take it away, Megan.
Thank you, David, for the wonderful introduction. Let me bring up my presentation here. So like David said, my name is Megan Koth. I have a number of paintings in this exhibition. They're all relatively large, and I wish that you could all experience them in person, but this wonderful online exhibition that the ADNA has put together for us is the next best thing, so I'm happy that you all are here. So when I came to the program here at UCSB, I was experimenting with self-portraiture wearing sheet masks, which are a type of skincare product pictured here. This is not a self-portrait of me, where you put on this cotton mask that's soaked with skincare essences to beautify or purify the skin. I was initially drawn to them for their formal qualities, but I started to find ways to insert them into more personal dialogues surrounding ritual, self-care, and catharsis relating to the body. So this is a piece titled Tug that's in the exhibition. I wanted to use these masks and then the products that are like them and related to them in skincare to speak to the reality of how people, especially women perhaps, negotiate around rituals of grooming and self-care, and in turn around their own bodies. I'm reminded of skincare brand Clean and Clear's tagline, clean and clear and under control, which I think really exemplifies the themes that I consider in my work. Because what are we, especially those who engage in these rituals extensively, often ultimately trying to communicate through beauty rituals and grooming, that our bodies and therefore we are clean, clear, and under control. I realized that the beauty ritual, as well as rituals related to self-care, are ultimately about providing the fantasy of control over our bodies, bodies that are ultimately fallible and by nature imperfect. This piece, titled Cleanse, also takes a cue from skincare advertising. I was inspired by this act that is a common trope in skincare, namely advertisements for cleansers. There's always this dramatic splashing of water on the face, usually done in slow motion. And this gesture, I thought, communicated a sense of catharsis and of wanting to cleanse oneself of impurities and to relish in one's conquering and control over them. So I inserted myself here in this context, but my face shows shock or even horror at this cleansing ritual, revealing the impurities, i.e. the blemishes beneath. And then this is just a little detail from that piece. And then this is an ongoing piece called Picking. It's sort of a collage installation of multiple paintings. And here I created this amalgamation of facial features to exist as a sort of geography of the self-evaluative space of beauty and flaws, the way that one may dissect their face into zones when scrutinizing it in a magnifying mirror was something that I was thinking about. And these flaws depicted include various pimples, whiteheads, a blister here, blackheads, and even a sty, which is a pimple that occurs on the eyelid. And I took a lot of inspiration from viral pimple popping videos, as well as imagery from acne and skincare advertising, along with highly magnified close-ups of skin and pores that you might find in a medical textbook. And this is my favorite piece from the collage. It's usually there's people's favorite or least favorite part of the collage because it's meant to be a nose strip with this very interesting pattern of it on it that's evocative of blackheads, but it also highlights this phenomenon called trypophobia, or fear of small holes, which is a not officially recognized phobia, but it describes this certain aversion that people have to looking at imagery like this. And even like this. This is just a picture of lotus pods, but there's something about images like this that just makes people repulsed. And I think that it's because it's an uncomfortable reminder of the grotesque reality of our own bodies that we try to ignore in the same way that we'd feel uncomfortable seeing a zoomed in photo of our own pores. And this portion of the collage is very personal to me. A few years back, I developed an internal abscess the size of a golf ball. And an abscess is essentially a pimple that grows inside of your body. And this required multiple surgeries over many years for me. I eventually connected the reality of these past experiences of having an abscess with my current interests in blemishes and self-care and skincare rituals, which looking back, I found a lot of solace in during this time in my life because, you know, kind of obsessing over skincare gave me a sense of control over my body at a time when I felt I was losing control over it. So this piece, although the reference kind of for it was a sweat gland viewed under a microscope, it also resembles the wound that remained after those surgeries. And the wound from those experiences is not yet resolved. But then again, none of our bodies really are. So this piece kind of stands to remind me of that. And ultimately, my work intends to present a nuanced, honest perspective of what it means to negotiate with the world while inhabiting a femme body, especially a body that may sometimes fail us. And so that's my work there. Thank you so much for allowing me to share it with you. I am pleased to introduce my colleague and friend, Marshall Sharpe. He's an incredible painter, and I think you'll all enjoy his work and research into his own family history. So take it away, Marshall.
All right, thank you so much, Megan. That was really beautiful. Let's all give Megan a big round of applause. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm the fifth presenter today. I'll be followed by Kio Griffith, and then we'll open it up for any questions or comments. I want to start with a quick cheers. If you're drinking, cheers. We've got to make this festive, especially since it's online. I also want to say that as I'm presenting, if there's anything that speaks to you or you want to comment, please comment as I'm presenting. I would love to see what you all have to say or what you think during my presentation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Okay, hopefully you can see this. So again, my name is Marshall Sharpe, and the theme of my exhibition is Facing My Family's Past. This work started by doing ancestry research, and through this process, I discovered that my fifth great-grandfather owned this plantation mansion called Glencairn, which is featured here in the top left. And there's this description of Glencairn here in this kind of manual to the antebellum South. And it describes him as this Alabama lawyer and legislator, leader in the secession movement, obviously a Confederate. And it makes no mention of the fact that he enslaved hundreds of African people. And this is kind of an example of whitewashing. And this is what I'm trying to work against with my work. This is the plantation mansion that he built. It's a Greek Revival style mansion, and this mansion was added to the National Register of Historic Places. When property is added to the National Register, it can increase in value, it can garner tourism, and most importantly, it can be preserved for future generations. And this is important because it's an example of white institutions using their power to create a whitewash narrative, because the slave cabins on the same property were not added to the National Register of Historic Places. They were not preserved. And so all that's left is the plantation mansion to this day. This is the painting that I created based on that photograph. I painted it on top of cotton batting, which is a soft material that you would put inside of a quilt, for example, to give it insulation. And I wanted to reference that kind of tactile, soft nature of the cotton because that was how my ancestors kind of extracted wealth from slave labor. I also wanted to recontextualize this plantation mansion away from the kind of nostalgic antebellum South that it's often portrayed in, and instead painted over these reds. And I called this plantation mansion as a site of violence, to think about this not as a place of Southern heritage, but as really a place of white terror. This is an example of the home in the exhibit. Through this research, I discovered that this former slave cabin was located on the same property as this plantation mansion. And it looks like a tool shed. It's being used as a tool shed in the 1930s when it was photographed. But of course, it was a home, you know, and it was a home for the enslaved people on this property. You can see that this would be a very difficult place to live. There are no windows on the property. You can see there's very little insulation. The fireplace is falling apart. And yet this was a place where once Black people were inside of this building, they could create community and they could create family. And so one of the things that I'm thinking about with my work is, as we take down these Confederate monuments throughout the South, what could they be replaced with that could really honor Black life and Black space? For me, the answer to that is the slave cabin. I created this piece based on that photograph, and I call this Former Slave Cabin Disguised as Tool Shed on my fifth great-grandfather's plantation. I've used grayscale, kind of black and white for this painting, but I've painted it over a background of gold. And the reason that I used gold is because I was thinking about this concept called kintsugi, which my friend Yumiko Glover introduced me to. Kintsugi is a Japanese term, and in Japanese culture, if you have a valuable ceramic vessel that falls and breaks, instead of just throwing away the pieces, you would glue them back together with gold leaf. And it's this philosophy in Japan that we don't need to throw away the broken aspects of the past, but that brokenness is an integral part of the object's history and something that should be preserved to remind us of that brokenness. And I was thinking about that in the concept, or in kind of conversation with the slave cabin, that this isn't a thing that we should destroy. It's horrific. It's a part of my family's past that I feel a great deal of shame and guilt over, but it's something that we need to preserve to remind us of this past that we never repeat again. And it's a past that continues to affect the present today and affect our relationships today. So it's a past that's still very relevant. This is an example of the painting, just to give you a sense of scale in the gallery. In this painting, I took that same cabin, I flipped it from right to left, and then I multiplied it across the horizon. And I knew that my fifth great grandfather had enslaved over 100 African people. And so I was imagining the scale and kind of the horror of that. And that's why I created this kind of sense of perspective with these multiple cabins going off into the distance. One thing I want to add about this is that throughout my life, I felt like this history that I carried was very shameful, and it was something that I didn't speak about. I was very silent about it. And slowly I began to realize that my silence was only contributing to this racial hierarchy that my ancestors helped to create. And so I felt like by creating work about this history, by interrogating it, by processing it in a very public way through my art, I could kind of undermine some of the work that my ancestors did and work against that, especially by trying to create work that honors Black life and Black spaces. This painting is called Ruins of the Slave Cabin in Fort George, Florida. I basically named it after the photograph from the 1930s. It was documented as part of the Public Works Administration. And I doubt that this building still exists to this day. Many of these slave cabins throughout the American South are dilapidated and eventually are destroyed just through weathering. And I wanted to depict that disintegration by using the paint. I wanted the concept and the materials to work together. And so I laid this canvas on the ground of my studio, and I poured this very wet paint onto the surface, and then used this huge leaf blower with like 230-mile-per-hour winds to blow the paint across the surface and make it look like the wind is present in this piece, and that it might even be part of the disintegration of this cabin. This piece is called Slave Cabin Near the Long Bridge in Chickahominy River, Virginia. And this is actually based on a drawing during the Civil War, during 1864, in which enslaved people were still living in this home. And I had a really interesting studio visit with Jane Callister and Phil Argent the other day, and we were talking about this piece and the ways that I might take it farther and change it. And we were talking specifically about this roof line that gives it kind of this Disney-esque feel that I'm uncomfortable with. And so I'm thinking about changing the slope of that roof to help this feel a little bit more gritty and show the actual conditions that people were living in, take it away from this country cottage feel that it has right now. This piece is called Slave Cabin Near Warrenton, Virginia. And you can see from this painting that this home is constructed from hewn logs. And on the right-hand side, you have this kind of porch type of thing that's been created from branches just laying over these sticks, and then the table underneath. This one I'm very excited about. This is a slave dwelling in Savannah, Georgia. And I'm excited about this because I'm going to collaborate on this piece with another artist named Tony Scott. And Tony Scott is here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Tony. Tony is a Black artist who is the descendant of enslaved people. And so it's very important for me to come together and work on this piece with Tony, because you have the descendant of enslavers, myself, and the descendant of enslaved coming together to paint on the same canvas, to make work about the same topic, and to interrogate this past that is so integral to our lives today and so integral to the ways that we relate to each other today. I'm not sure what Tony is going to do with this, but I've given her free rein and just said the most important thing for me is that the two of us are coming together to work on this project. I think that's what really makes it interesting and makes it special. This last piece is called Slave Yard. And what I'm trying to say with my work and this particular series is that we are the wealthiest country in the world, not because we are good, hardworking, kind, Christian people, but because as a country, we engaged in some of the worst forms of genocide of Native people and enslavement of African people that the world has ever seen. And I think that if we can acknowledge that as a society, then hopefully we can be more compassionate towards people that are different towards us or different from us, and also more open to the idea of reparations moving forward. So thank you so much for your attention and for being here today and listening to our artist talks. I really appreciate you coming. And next up is our last artist, Kio Griffith. After his presentation, we'll move to the Q&A. So let's give a big round of applause for Kio Griffith. Kio, we can't hear you just yet.
Okay, I'll start again. Thank you so much for that presentation, Marshall. It's a pleasure to be among this group. I really learned a lot from everyone here. And it's a bit of a hard to follow up with all that great new work, that you've all done. Also very difficult during this time because, I'm feeling quite lonely off campus. But anyway, I'm going to get right into my work here. So the program is more focused on making work that was catering to I wanted to focus
No,
and this
breaking up a little bit.
particular. Really?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. Kio, are you still there? Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Is it pretty bad?
Yeah,
I think you're back now.
I think you're back. You just need to pause for a bit.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, thanks. Wow. So anyway, what you're seeing right here, this first slide is the solo show that I was lucky to do before the lockdown at the last week of February, titled No Region Would. And I like combining pieces together in a curatorial way of curating my own work into a bigger installation work. And that said, I find myself being in between things quite a bit. So I'm in between languages as I interpret between my father and mother, and perhaps bringing people to do shows from Japan, a little bit of a cultural agent in a way. And that said, there's a great part to it, which is that I can provide that service. And the other side is that I end up being invisible in that mix. So if anything, what I wanted to do in the program was to deal with that part. And ethnicity that I carry with me. One of the things I've done here, they saw on the last slide, was this thing called the algorithm counter. It's a programmed piece, computer programmed piece, where you can rotate these digits individually. And as they accelerate and overlap the Japanese alphabet, the katakana, and the Roman alphabet get superimposed and they morph into another language. which kind of represents my daily kind of thought and stream of thoughts, because the nuancing, sometimes you have to go back and forth. You know, there are words in English that make sense more than words in Japanese, and vice versa. And that's what it looks like when it's sped up really fast. The other work that you saw in the first slide is this, the first piece that I made coming into the program. And it's a video, 14-minute video of me finding out about my birth certificate not being actualized, or not actually existing. A story that I found out from my mother, that it got destroyed in a hospital demolition. So I thought about the undocumented status, but not that it really affected me, because my father is an American citizen. But that also seems problematic to me, because if anything, I need to take care of my mother, and I need that maternal citizenship to be able to do that. So what I found out recently in these decades of her embarrassment is that she forged my birth certificate for me to be validated. And when I interrogated her further, I found out that it wasn't really a forgery, but she actually made an original drawing, because she had nothing to go by. And in the video, calling her up to get instructions to make that drawing myself, to take ownership of myself of this certificate. So by doing this, I got more interested in working on performance work, because in a way this is like performance performance medium of video. Further down, I also did more research on the family history, and I was encouraged because Marshall was dealing with that too, and I thought this was really good. I could talk with him and, you know, have a dialogue about that. Another existence issue was that both sides of the family fought in the same battle scene in the Pacific War. To the left is my grandfather, my grandmother, the uncle in the middle who survived the kamikaze mission because the war ended a week before he had to go, and my two uncles who were fighter pilots who fought in the that my grandfather was in. And this was the particular aircraft carrier that my grandfather was co-captain on. You can't really tell that these were rather cheaply made, and they had an average lifespan of 4 to 6 months. And the running joke is that they had these antennas on there, the current technology back then, but nobody really knew how to work it. So it's like they lost the manual, and they end up being like decorations. I thought that was really funny. So I remembered as a child, I grew up with these war toys, also made from cheap materials. So if you bought children's books, you had these kits, and they'll give you instructions of building, chopsticks and rubber bands, and it'll be a toy gun. And then I thought about those antennas again, that they were just decorative. And in a solo show at Rio Hondo College last year, I decided that if they were decorative, what would make it more interesting if it had a reference to the modern art sculpture of that time in the late 1930s and early 1940s. Also, I thought about the National Archives photos of these ships, war machines sinking into the sea, huge buildings. The Coral Sea, which is like the sea paradise in the South Pacific, but that never gets talked about as an environmental issue. I thought about people like Jackson Pollock, Franz Klein, if they looked at these archive photos, and perhaps that maybe that inspired them to make action paintings. So here on the right is my simulation of an action painting based on these photographs. And then further on, I build them into war plans as the child would, imagine him or herself or whatever being like some kind of leader of a troop and making plans of how these things would work out in a battle scene. I think we all grew up with this in some way or another. And further, I made this into a sculpture, an installation, and then from here on, I got more interested in performance work, but also going back to my original love, which is sound work. And I made these sound installations on campus, and the whole point was to make them kind of precarious, based on that I had more of affinity with how cheap materials could be more interesting. And I also was interested in involving people to play these instruments. So in this one, this was one called coefficient decimate room instrument. Last year, I had my cohort in the second year who have already graduated to play this piece together. It was a lot of fun. On another piece, I used aluminum foil to install on the floor that defined the square footage of a room. I did this first at UCSB, the same gallery that I just showed you at the Mini Box, and then I took this further to a triennial in Japan, where I had musicians also participate in folding this aluminum foil material, which produced sounds. So the aluminum foil is activated to become a sound object, sound sculpture, and then ends up wrapping me around, and then I get compressed to becoming a single data. Same thing I've done back in February as part of a symposium. I had people help me work this out, and as you see in the middle picture, the real estate gets smaller and smaller, and as you feel a crunch, you have to jump out, and you turn from being a participant into a observer or an audience member. And then the first 3 months or first 2 months of this year, I got more interested in working with video, making sound or noise, and using that as some kind of a political statement or social statement. And in this piece, I am actually performing with a video projector, holding it in my hand, and sweeping through the floor, sweeping light through the floor and noise. And the content of this video are these objects, which are three-dimensional vector images, vector files or data, which end up being, it is my idea of a virtual instrument, each independent on its own, that together they can create it like a duo or a trio or an orchestra if it's large enough. So that's this one, and I'll just play it a little bit. And you see, so the interesting thing is the vector information, which is basically line and point. As you delete these things, it turns from being quite a regular harmonic instrument into detuning and then becoming a more And then I think this was February 10th. I thought about the Hong Kong protesters wearing the mask and how ironically that has changed, and them concealing their identity to now the mask has taken on the meaning of the current health crisis, the pandemic of protecting us or shielding us from other people. And in this piece, I am using another medium or tool that I wanted to use for a while, which is the clock. And using the clock as an instrument and defining time and a measurement and somehow operating within the space. And another, this was also from that last show at the Glass Box at the end of February, where I had all these, I think it was 100 clocks that installed in the front room, defining the different time zones, but also kind of giving an implication of what is happening in between these time zones, also offsetting the time sound in the other room. And to the right, I was also able to activate the sunlight so that it became a sundial at the same time. Okay, and here's the last one I'm going to show you. And this was done within the quarantine period last month. So I made a point of doing these daily mashups on my iPhone, 2-inch by 4-inch screen, kind of creating myself to be in the further confinement within my phone, and negotiating between two people that I could find in history, either politicians or musicians or artists, and becoming the negotiator in between these people. So it's kind of creating like a stereogrammetry, but also a interpreter of these different sides. These are collages, but they also can be animated, which I'm working on right now. And I am also creating a sound synthesis work through the MAT department, working with Curtis Rhodes. So that would be part of my graduate thesis work. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you, everybody.
All right, let's give a big round of applause to Kio. Thank you so much for presenting, Kio. That was really beautiful. And you've created so much work here. It's really great to see it all come together. Okay, that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for all of your attention and for coming to help us celebrate. Please give me another cheers. Thank you for coming. We want to open up the floor now to any questions. And if you raise your hand, then we can actually give you permission to speak, or Serene can give you permission to speak. Or you can also type your questions into the chat box if you have any questions for us.
Someone raised their hand, so I'm giving them permission to talk.
Okay.
Hey, this is John Abish. This is for Sharpe. Hey, Marshall.
Hi, John. Thanks for coming.
No problem. I'm glad to be here. This is a question for Marshall, for you. In your one painting, I was actually interested about your concern for the curved roof, and you felt it was Disney-esque or something like that. And I wondered if you thought about the background color being gold as part of the reason why you were concerned with it, or more because of the curvature of the roof. From how you explained it, I just felt like the curvature had such a meaning to it, the way that the deconstruction of the building was occurring. But I didn't know if you had discussed kind of the background color being a factor of your concern.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. Thank you. As I was looking at it, I felt like that painting in particular did have a Disney quality, and multiple people that have seen it have said, oh, this feels like Disney. Whereas the other ones that have the gold, no one said that about the other ones.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out why it feels like Disney. And my hunch after meeting with some of my mentors, Jane Couster and Phil Argent, is that it might be that roof. But I won't really know until I change it and then, take a look at it and see from there.
Got it.
That's a great question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great work. Great work, everyone, actually. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Erin, did you have a question?
I did. I'm curious how you will install this show at the MCA with the help of Alex out there in TV land. Or how will it work? I'm just curious if you have an idea yet or if you've talked about it.
Did you want to direct your question to a particular person, Erin?
Who will I torture? Let me think about this. Hey, Thomas, how about you? Such a colorful little spot over there. I want to talk to you.
I'm really excited about the MCA opportunity. Super thankful to Shauna, and there's a lot of details we still need to figure out. I think that, you know, obviously it probably depends on when things kind of start getting back to normal in terms of
Oh no.
Oh no.
What?
You were lagging.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so a lot of the technical details still need to be figured out, but I think that that's like huge for us who, most of us, you know, have been thinking about an in-person presentation for, you know, since we began the program. So.
All right, thank you so much, Thomas, for helping us answer that question. And thank you, Erin, for being here and asking the question. Our next question goes to Jeffrey Stewart, one of our mentors and faculty members. Jeffrey, how are you?
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi. You know, it was interesting to me that so many of the pieces in general seem to be engaged with this issue of the body and pain. You know, I mean, it just seems like pain is a big, I mean, maybe that's appropriate, right? I mean, we're generally, but I really thought it was courageous of you guys to explore, you know, the painful aspects of beauty, essentially. So anyway, I'll go on that. The Disney thing I just wanted to mention in terms of Marshall is, you know, it's something that you could perhaps do more with or problematize, because, you know, Disney, when I was in Virginia, Disney had proposed a theme park on slavery, you know, to have, you know, a Disney theme park where you would learn about slavery. And they thought this was going to be really progressive. And a friend of mine, you know, got a lot of money for being a consultant to them and ended up not being able to do it, right? Because they were trying to figure out, how are you going to do, you know, the Disney thing? So it might be worth thinking about is if people begin to see a Disney-esque aspect to your painting, then that might be something you not want. I'm not saying you don't want it. I'm just saying it might be something you wouldn't want. And so you might think about that. And then what is it about sort of that kind of almost glistening beauty of these slave cabins and whatever that distracts us from their actual horror? I mean, on one level, obviously, you know, art is about beauty and, you know, and all that. And they are beautiful. How do you insert the criticality, let's say, into these paintings in such a way that it's unmistakable? That would be one thing. Megan, I loved your presentation, and I was thinking about the connection between the, I call them the little dots or orifices, you know, the little red things, and then the red things were on the face. It was almost like the pimples and the abscesses kind of dropped off the face onto the ground, and then you're not painting them. And so I just wondered if there was some, I don't know, way of talking about that connects those problems of the face and how abscesses and styes problematize our notion of beauty in a more direct way, because the picture with the pimples on it is still beautiful, but the orifices without the face are not beautiful, and they're I think somebody said disturbing. And then Kio, I was really hurt, man, that like, you know, in doing your presentation and everything, you didn't do the, you know, talk about the fantastic work that you did with the Jeffrey's Jazz Coffee House with your video stuff. I mean, because maybe I should have given you some video. I took some, but I mean, Kio, you brought all of that sensibility and complexity and almost dance. You kind of did a dance with the projector and the glass box. You turned that into a whole thing of color. The color of your electronic performance video stuff really came out when you linked it to the jazz performances. And it really added so much. It really transformed those experiences. And of course, the last one we had on March 7th, which if I'd known what I know now, I would have not, you know, had it. Because we were in there partying and we had a situation where there were about 15 monitors and Kio had his stuff projected all on these monitors at the same time that people were dancing and performing. I mean, it's a really incredible thing you did, man, of inter-arts. Performance and art. So don't hold that back anymore, man, because you know I'm gonna be back to you.
I just had too much material. I'm sorry.
I know that's your problem, brother. You got too much material.
Right.
Anyway, kudos to you all.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Megan, did you want to respond at all to Jeffrey's comments?
Oh gosh, what was he?
I know, I'm sorry.
Well, we're also doing an independent study right now, so it's like we've also.
Oh yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I didn't mean that you had to respond. I just was laying that out there for all of you to just think about.
Yeah.
I don't want to take it up. Someone else, I'm sure, has other questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey. We appreciate it. Okay, it looks like our next question is going to Echo. Echo is one of our MFA graduates who graduated just a year ago. Welcome, Echo.
Hey, y'all. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, y'all. Hey. I actually have a question for Serene. So at the beginning of one of your videos, I think, I don't actually know. It looked like it might have been ELIZA, like something that runs off of Emacs. I was wondering how incorporating 60s AI informed the video piece for you.
Yeah, I think it's just thinking through like psychoanalysis and like ELIZA as this like psychoanalysis who's like a woman who's like maybe designed to be a game, I guess, like play and like sort of like go inside of yourself and like learn about yourself. So I kind of was just using that in like an experimental way to kind of access my own, I don't know, thoughts about like the disembodied voice and its relationship to like femme identity. And I don't know, I definitely think a lot about, I'm not really sure about 60s AI as much as like the psychoanalytic quality and the fact that it's like lodged in the Emacs terminal and you can find it and like play with it, which I think is really wild that you can just like access this weird artifact of technology. Yeah.
For
Does
sure.
that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I was just curious. Yeah, because ELIZA is very like circular in its logic. It only repeats back to you what you've already said to it. So it is just kind of like this like circling program.
Yeah.
There's other stuff in Emacs too. Like, I don't know if you've seen Done It, but that's like a really interesting like text adventure game where yeah, you're just like moving through this landscape, but you can't actually see it. It's just described to you.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Thanks for telling me about that. I'll check it out.
Did a great job with his.
And I hope you're well. It's nice to hear your voice.
Marshall,
I wish I could.
can you mute my dad on pool, please?
Here, I'm gonna my
Only
hand now.
Serene can, I'm
Bye.
sorry. Okay, thank you so much, Echo. Our next question goes to Emily McElroy, a fabulous painter and teacher in Hawaii. Emily, thanks for being with us today.
Marshall, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this question, surprise, is directed for you. Also, congratulations. It was a pleasure to watch all of your presentations. So I've been working with you. I have two questions actually for, I don't know how many years now, 5 or 6 years, something like this. And I remember the night that the whole, this whole line of inquiry was kind of born for you in Reem's apartment, where we were talking about things that you were potentially interested in exploring as new bodies of work. And you kind of brought this up out of the shadows, and you had these kind of fears and anxieties about what it might be like to dig into this history and dig into this past. And obviously you had mentioned that there was shame and guilt about some of this, and you didn't know how your family might react to this and what kind of work might come out of it. So my first question was, I'm just curious if you came up against any obstacles in your research and or in the making of this work, and either personally or publicly, you know, how it has been received. And then also, you know, so those obstacles, and then also how you feel this work has, like what level of integration do you feel like you've achieved personally through doing it, and where do you see, if at all, I know you just finished this massive project, this work going in the future? Do you feel like it's been resolved, integrated, and kind of come to a cycle of completion, and you might move in a different direction now, or do you even know?
Wow, those are great questions. Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate that. You know, there have been some obstacles, probably obstacles that I created for myself. I think the biggest obstacle would be my representation of the Black body, and just how problematic that is for a white artist to deal with the Black body and to deal with Black pain. Thankfully, I've had some really fabulous faculty mentors, including Jeffrey Stewart, who was here earlier. Kind of pushed me and challenged me. And I don't know if you noticed, but I took all of the figures out of those paintings of the slave cabins to try to create work that people could approach and that could create dialogue without creating a lot of anger and resentment. So that was probably my biggest obstacle. I feel like this work has been very personal to me, and I do feel like it's changing me as a person, and certainly opening me up to realize the ways that I benefit from white privilege and the ways that I might try to undermine that and give other people voice and space. And in the future, I'm hoping to continue creating work about my ancestors and kind of tell this problematic story of these French Huguenots that escaped France because they're Protestants and France is Catholic at the time, and then come to the United States hoping to create a new world, a new utopia, and a part of that utopia involves genocide and enslavement. And it's kind of this quintessential American story, but also a very personal story to my own family. So we'll see where it goes. But thank you so much for your question and for being here today.
Yeah, I look forward to talking with you more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Emily. Our next question is going to go to David Wesley-White's dad. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Very good. I just hit the wrong key here. You got to understand that I'm a senior citizen and David is my youngest artist, and really proud of his presentation tonight, as well as all of you. I have looked forward to this. We would normally be there physically for your graduation program and all the rest, but this virus has made it very difficult. Okay, David, I can't see you on the screen. I hit some wrong key, and you got to understand it's because there it is. I got you live, pal. I'm sorry. I don't want to embarrass you. I just want to say that I am just so impressed with your colleagues in this whole program. It has been a year of excitement for me to think of you in that location and doing so well with your colleagues. I was wondering to ask you that since I had been a theatrical director earlier in my career as an educator, I wonder why drama came into your art presentation today, because you had such a variety of good things, and I was so excited to see them all. And then all of a sudden, the acting comes out.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dad, for the question. Can you guys hear me
Yeah, go ahead.
and see me? Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I think performativity and drama definitely has a place in my past. I grew up dancing for my aunt's local dance studio, Karen Jean White School of Dance. And, you know, since the age of 3, I was in local productions doing, you know, performing arts, singing, musicals, etc. I was always grew up on stage and comfortable doing that. I think now as I have transitioned into being a visual artist, that same impulse has definitely found its way into my work. And it's different when you're not working from a script and instead you're creating your own kind of like visual language to work from. So with this particular piece that you guys saw, it was very much me performing character development like for the camera in real time in a sense. And a lot of that was very spontaneous. Like I just had this impulse, I found the location, I created the costumes, and like it was all happening at once, and it was very self-directed. I like put this whole thing together on a whim, and then I came back with the footage and had that to work with, and I was able to incorporate a lot of other different ideas into the editing and whatnot. But I think using my physical body is important to me, and it brings humor and fun to the work, I hope. And yeah, there's just an element of play too. Like since being a young kid growing up with parents who really supported kind of like free play. Me and my siblings loved dressing up in costumes. My sister would always put wigs on me and dress me up as a girl and put on makeup and stuff. So I thank them all for that freedom that allowed me to kind of express my queerness at a young age. I'm really grateful for that because I know not everyone has that experience.
Well, thank you very much, David, for this exciting night. I'm telling you, this is the best thing that happened my entire month for the whole group. Thank you so much. This is to say that whatever's going on out there in the world that I don't understand, and none of us understand it, and it's got to change. It's got to get back to normal. But I want to thank all of you for making it a successful night. And I felt it was somewhere else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. White. We appreciate it. Okay, our next question goes to esteemed artist Mesa Hickson, a graduate of the MFA program and now a PhD candidate in theater. Mesa, how are you?
Oh, hello, everyone, and thank you for unmuting me to have some time with you. I am your biggest fans, honestly, I'm pretty sure, and maybe not. I know the professors love you too, but you should all be commended for your incredible work and a really fantastic MFA thesis exhibition during the most trying time. And I thought it was bad going through the Thomas Fire during my MFA, but COVID-19, hats off to you, my comrades, hats off to you. Thank you for bringing us this incredible presentation tonight. I wanted to ask you about this idea of history and memory in each of your practices and the way in which you individually approach the idea of reading history against the grain. And, in Thomas's work, you see the Jolly Green Giant and you see the representations of the rural in these Grant Woods paintings. And then you see this very playful approach to critiquing or deconstructing neoliberal capitalism in the kind of rural iconography that you use, Thomas. And Serene, you're dealing with these issues of the idea of the female body as it is configured in a kind of post-human sense via technology. And Megan, you're looking at the sort of history of the body as a kind of archive or critique of, in a way, the ways in which a capitalist corporate structure tries to create a perfect body. and how that's filtered through Instagram. And David, you look at the sort of these figures in your most recent work, this very interesting video that you showed us tonight, which you said you didn't have the words yet to describe, but that seems to kind of simulate a historic medieval castle or something like that, where you insert yourself into the narrative in these costumes. Marshall, obviously the slave quarters that you're depicting are a kind of historiographic critique of your own family's history of owning slaves, and this way of making work that critiques that history in the present. And Kio, your work dealing with this idea of your origins, your mother's birth certificate, rewriting that, how she's recreated that. And there's this idea of, in all of your work, the critique of history and this rewriting of it in your own individual practices. So I'm wondering how you feel about this idea of your work as an activist statement, or how do you configure that in your own understandings of your work vis-a-vis the art market, the kind of notion of the global capitalist art market, as you critique these kinds of histories of representation of the body, of the stereotypically perfect female body, the gay body, the queer body, the Japanese body, the the enslaved body. How do you respond to that, just in terms of your notions of activism in this historiographic practice within your performative work? And I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Great question, Mesa. Did you want to direct your question towards one person in particular?
I mean, I would love to just, let's, can we hear from all of you briefly? Because it's really something I'd like to hear from each of you. So let's maybe start with Thomas, since he went first.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mesa. I missed your articulate voice around the studios. And, but yeah, I think that it's really important to, consider the kind of multifaceted influences that impact our current understandings and disposition moving forward. And I find, personally, I find myself trying to walk a balance between pure activism and engaging in the art market and completely disregarding or disrespecting the past, which I think is necessary sometimes, but also there are problematic aspects that I think are often re-articulated in order to serve new purposes. So I think, those are some general thoughts on the topic of exploring history and how it relates to current activism. But I'll let some of the other panelists talk, so I don't take up all the time. Serene, you want to?
Yeah, I can go next. I mean, I think it is really interesting to think about all of our work through like memory and like the body as archive and how we work with it. I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, it's always just like these channels of research and discovery and just like random collisions that then procure something deeper or more profound that I just kind of let go and experience. And so that's always kind of where I'm working from and trying to just reevaluate how structures and pedagogies and ideas like arise as like truth. And I think that's what's so exciting about being an artist, is that you get to unpack that and undo that. And that's like, I think what I like to do with my work is just like collide a lot of different information and feelings and like felt sensations at once, in hopes that like it can like break open a new system or go beyond systems. Yeah, who wants to go next?
I can go next. Well, I didn't really have a chance to talk about this in my presentation today, but something that shows up more in my thesis research is this sort of like me connecting my work as a painter, or rather connecting, you know, these themes around the body in my work to the actual act of painting, and then I even bring it to commentary around the particular challenges of just being you know, a female artist in this, you know, Instagram age where, you know, self-presentation carries a lot of weight and a lot of baggage and a lot of new challenges. And so I kind of connect that sort of like, for instance, the sort of politics around the way that female painters' work is often, you know, a dismissive comments that they may receive is that their paintings are decorative or pretty, and that being used as this sort of way of devaluing their work because it basically feels feminine, and, you know, connecting that to the devaluing of the feminine in general in my, you know, conversations around beauty rituals. So there's kind of like a meta narrative going on with my work that's kind of just about being a woman artist now, that, you know, aside from, you know, the very specific topics surrounding my body and around skincare. So that's another way that I want my work to be contextualized within like a larger conversation just beyond my own personal body. I hope that answered your question somehow.
Absolutely.
Kio, David, did either of you all want to answer Mesa's question before we move on?
I think everyone else did a fabulous job explaining. I'll save. I have 2 more questions in the queue, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Kio, did you want to add anything? I think you're still muted.
Thank you again for reminding me about the mute. Yeah, that is actually a pretty difficult question for me, I think, because, you know, I am straddling between different races and territory and stuff like that. But that said, I do go on a daily basis of having to deal with people making stereotypical, you know, ideas about things. You know, it doesn't go any further, which is kind of disappointing and sad. So, if anything, if there's more of that can coalesce in our daily vocabulary, I think it would make it more interesting, really, of all of us being artists. I think I definitely had it with all of you, you know, including the second year, you, Mesa, and Echo, and everybody. We definitely have that rapport, I think. But it needs to happen more on the outside, I think, you know.
All right, well, Mesa, thank you so much for that question. That was, it's great to have you here, and
Yeah, we
fun
love
that you can participate with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I miss you all so much. You have no idea. This is just the best night in the past 3 months. I love you all.
Good. I miss you too.
We'll Zoom soon.
Mwah.
All right, I think our next question goes to Dick Hevdage, our department chair and faculty here at UCSB. Dick, how are you?
I'm good. I'm still alive, and that's an achievement. Probably my only achievement at this point. I really have I haven't got a substantive question. I just wanted to join the chorus of congratulations and pride in what you should take pride in what you've managed to do under these circumstances. And like David's father, I'm a senior citizen, so I take my hat off to you all, not that I'm wearing one, but for what you've managed to demonstrate about creativity and resilience in these testing times. So it seems to me that I'm amazed, by the way, by the amount of new work that you've produced and new reflections that you've managed to produce in these circumstances about the work you've been committed to for 2 years. I think it's an amazingly impressive arc of achievement that you've managed to pull off in very difficult circumstances. That's what artists tend to do. You're used to precarity and improvisation, and you've demonstrated what the strength and virtue and importance of art is. I actually feel that you don't need any easing of the lockdown, because all artists, visual artists, spend a lot of time locked down in their studios, facing a blank wall and making things up. And, you know, that's the way forward. I think we can learn from you how to make a great deal out of very difficult and trying circumstances. So well done. That's it.
Thank you so much, Dick.
So
It's great to
Dick.
hear your
Thank you, Dick.
voice.
Hey, Dick.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank you,
checking
Dick.
in with us.
Yeah, me
Marshall,
both.
I just wanted to alert you that there's questions in the chat too. I think that's different than the other version. Just like
I've kind of fallen behind. Did you want to ask one of the, or point out one of the
well,
questions?
I could just jump in and answer. There's 2 questions that are similar towards me about the Monopoly game. If now's
Yeah,
a good
go
time.
for it.
Okay, great. So Corb asked me, David, can you elaborate on the history of that Monopoly game and your interpretation of the pieces? And Kalea, a first year here at UCSB, asked, are you going to be using those Monopoly pieces within a new video? Will you be making your own Monopoly board as well with the pieces? So both relevant questions. Yes, I do see it as a work in progress. The pieces themselves were the start, so I have them here, all the different versions. I do want to make a board game. I'm still kind of deciding the best way to go about it. A couple of my ideas right now is to make a quilt out of it, or like a table version that can be played actually at large scale, like with the larger pieces. So the pieces that were originally in the game were like this one, which I think is like a bathhouse instead of a hotel in the original Monopoly, and these witch handcuffs, which I think like symbolize like BDSM culture in the gay community. And then the other ones that I invented and put in the game are like this, the Truvada PrEP pill, which is the preventative HIV medication that was life-changing for a lot of gays. The corn, because I wanted to make it, it looked really interesting and also weirdly phallic, and I wanted to put a reference to food in the game as well. And then I made a little miniature version of a Felix Gonzalez Torres pillow from his famous photographic piece, and then a hand weight to represent kind of the hypermasculinity that often exists in gay culture, that could be just as kind of damaging as, you know, straight culture for that matter. There, you know, homophobia can exist in the gay community, and it very much does. And lastly, I just wanted to, talk about the history of the game itself a little bit. So it was made by a game company called Fire Island Games, which is actually located out of West Hollywood. And as I was researching them, I saw that they lost their business because of a copyright infringement. And I'm wondering if it is from this, I couldn't find it, but I wonder if it's from this game itself, because the real Monopoly game is made by Parker Brothers, and this is a total ripoff of it. So I do wonder if Parker Brothers sued them and got the gays shut down.
Oh my gosh.
So I can safely use it without copyright problems because the company no longer exists. But that said, it's definitely much still a work in progress. And to answer Clay's question, I do feel like they will find their way into the video. So the video you guys saw, the excerpt of today, it's in a completed version on the ADNA website. So I do encourage everyone to go there and check out the full version from begin to end if you found that interesting. But I do see that video itself extending to a longer version that will be in the MCA show. And yes, I definitely want to put these sculptural pieces in that video as well.
I think it's really interesting, the like history of the Monopoly version that you're talking about, and that the copyrighted version of was stolen by the game was stolen from a woman who was a teacher who made Monopoly as a learning device talking about how monopolies are negative for economic purposes. So yeah, it's interesting how things kind of come full circle there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm just looking in the panel to see if there's anyone else that wants to ask a question. If you do, go ahead and raise your hand so that Serene can give you permission to speak. Artists, is there any other questions you might have gotten privately in the chat that you want to answer?
I mean, I think it would be great to respond to the congratulations that we've gotten, and yeah, I just really appreciate everyone being here and gotten a ton of support from the UCSB faculty and our colleagues, the first years and the ones who graduated last year, and all you. So I'll just say that.
Great, thank you, Thomas. David, Megan, Kio, Serene, would you like to say anything else before we conclude?
Just thank you to all. It was really a great night. And thank you to Marshall for putting this together. It was his idea, and you know, we all worked on this process, but he definitely spearheaded, is that a word, the effort. So thank you, Marshall.
We should give an applause to Marshall. He really stepped up on this one.
Well, and Serene as well. She
Serene,
did a lot of troubleshooting
Serene
to get
as well.
this webinar to run smoothly.
So
thank you, Serene.
Thank you,
Serene
Serene.
did all the work.
No, but it's great.
Just
Glad
like
it worked.
the Fem AI, Serene.
Yeah, exactly.
Cut the labor.
Like a meta performance by Serene.
That's kind of what I was going for, but it was fun. And yeah, I feel like check out our show. Should we put a link in the, did you put a link in there?
Yes, I did put a link in, but I'll put another one up.
Yeah. So go to the ADNA website and see the show, and just take a look at it, because I know that not all of us put every single piece that we made in it. And so you can see more of our work in a more of an online gallery setting.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for coming and enduring some more screen time. We're very happy that we had this opportunity to share.
Okay, well, I think if there's no more questions, we might sign out. Mesa Hickson is asking when Shauna Moulton's solo show is going to be. It's to be announced. We don't know how long the museum will be closed, but Mesa, you will be the first one to find out when Shauna's show is going to be. All right, thank you all very much for coming today and participating in this opening. We hope that you go to the museum and see the work in person. And I just want to give a round of applause to all of the artists and a big thank you to Serene for putting together this live webinar. All right, good night, everyone.
Night. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it'll be recorded, so we can post it if you want to share it.
You can save the chat if you want.
I want to save the chat. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. You see the three dots? Bottom
Yeah,
right, three dots? Yeah.
There's a way to save the chat.
Yeah, it's a three dots. Bottom.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
bottom right.
sign out. I'll see y'all later.
All right.
Thanks, Marshall.
Thanks, Marshall.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Got to
Your
recover for that now.
Oh wow, we went till 7:20.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that was expected. I feel like that was good.
Well, we said 5:30 to 6:30.
Yeah, and the presentations were only, you know, like 10 minutes over, so I think it was perfect.
Yeah, we did okay. I guess I should I'll end the stop live stream.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'll just stay on in case anyone wants to ask any more questions, but. Woo, we did it! We're all good.
I wish you could do a high five.
14 attendees.
Well, it's gonna be so depressing when you turn this off and then we're just sitting alone.
Oh no! Oh, don't say that.
That's
That's so.
Go outside. I'm gonna go outside and.
Yeah, I need to go
Yeah.
outside.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
Jeffrey,
get some-
thanks for coming.
Get some sun.
Jeffrey's still here.
Thanks,
I know.
Yeah,
Jeffrey.
thank you, Jeffrey.
I'm trying to unmute him, but
My sister texted me, Jeffrey, while you were asking your questions, and she was like, I love this guy.
I can't
Nice.
Dad, you guys are fabulous. I'm going to be so sad when you leave. So don't
Oh.
I
leave.
know.
Don't leave. Just stay around.
We won't,
It is
we're
better
probably not
than
going to
all
leave.
the shit the next people are going to do.
How about 6
Become
teaching
drifters,
fellowships?
we'll just keep
David,
hanging around.
David, your shit is dope, man. I know your father was upset about maybe the dramatic, but I loved it. Particularly the gloves, man. The gloves, too cold.
Jeffrey, check out the full video. I think you'll like it. It's on the
Okay.
website.
Right. Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Jeffrey.
Okay. Bye.
Man, I'll take this jacket off. Oh, and
My dad is still here. Dad, you can leave.
I think he wants to talk.
I know, you can talk.
Leah's
Dad, what's up?
here. Tony's
Hold
here.
on.
Yumiko's here. So,
Be right back.
I have to unmute him somehow.
Hold on, let me see. I can't.
It won't let me unmute your dad. I don't know why.
It's okay. It's probably because it's over. Oh, there he is. Hi, Dad. What's up?
Are you the survivors? You're still on screen. It's incredible.
Dad, how drunk are you right now?
I worked 12 hours today to keep it together, and I was so impressed that this came across. Can you see my face?
No.
No,
we can't.
Good, good. My hair is about 4 weeks overdue. I've got an afro that I had back in 1982 when I was teaching school. I had everybody confused, David. You remember that story? I had a sport jacket and a tie right up to my collar. And at the top of my head, I had this brown, today it's totally white, afro. And the name was White, Steve White, get it? Okay. But in any case, I survived through that, and now it's back to my afro, but it's white. What a great, great presentation. So
Thank
well
you for
thought.
joining. Thank you.
I'm
It was
surprised
meaningful.
I even made it work.
Yeah.
Your brother Luke helped me set this up, so that was good.
that is good.
Okay.
Well, enjoy the rest of your night.
Okay.
Bye, Dad.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye,
ladies.
David, Dad.
Thank you
Wonderful
for being here.
presentation. I was so impressed. Really.
Oh, thank you for being here.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Take care. Thank you.
Oh,
Such a great dad.
Yeah.
Tony Scott. Hey.
I just want to tell you how much I've loved each one of your presentations tonight. And I don't want to let go. That's why I'm like one of the last few still hanging on. I just was so inspired by you and just grateful. And I want to see a recording of this, and congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely send you the recording.
Loved you guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for being here,
Thank you, Tony. Miss you. Hope to see you again someday.
Put it out
Thank
after
you, Tony.
My dad's here. Dad, are you going to talk?
He's muted.
He won't unmute. He has to unmute it. He has to accept. Hi. Dad. I don't think he's going to say anything.
Oh, no.
Okay. My dad has a voice kind of like, you know, not exactly like your dad, but like my dad's from New York and like has this really nice voice. I wanted him to talk.
It's funny because during my undergrad show, I made a piece that was like about him, and it was like the letters that he and his mom exchanged during his college experience. So I just like presented all of these letters, and he ended up like staking out next to it and just like talking to everyone who was walking by, being like, I wrote these. So it's a reoccurring theme. He likes to
I
be
really
involved.
feel like you should make, I just want to make work with all like my family's voices. It'd be so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because some people just have such amazing voices. We're
For
down
sure.
to 5 attendees.
Just like like David, you've done impersonations of your dad for us before, and when I heard his voice, I was like, oh my God, it's him.
Did you get it now? That's so
The
funny.
myth, the legend. He's here.
Wow.
I think someone, Jane Wolfinger, I think said in the chat, she was like, your dad brought a tear to my eye.
I think it was, yeah, I'm crying. Like,
So cute.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
It's adorable.
Well, congrats everyone. We're success stories. You
we
know,
are.
Dick even came and said something. We're doing it.